Have you ever wondered how long you would survive in prehistoric times? Well, that is exactly what I'm going to try and do today, as I'm playing the first 50 days of Roots of Pacha. If this was real life, I think the choices I made during these 50 days may have led to the extinction of humans. But without further ado, let's get into this wonderful Stone Age themed life and farming sim. I hope you enjoy. So the first thing to do is create our character. There were a few options here and I think they stuck pretty on brand with what they were trying to do. Lots of loincloths and rags. I of course chose the hair option with the flower. You know, we got to keep on brand here. I was then given a little bit of an insight into the backstory of Pacha, and just like that we were home, and this is where the hard work really began. So on day one, I was awoken to a very warm welcome from Igrok and Mary, who wasted no time in telling me how to farm. I found some very conveniently placed carrot seeds to help me get started on my farm. In need of somewhere to plant my carrot seeds, I began clearing out a small area on the farm with my tool, which seemed to destroy rocks, wood and fibre, which was great. Once my seeds were planted, it was time to explore beyond the farm and see what else was out there. The first person I met was Tare, who taught me about making contributions. Apparently capitalism still existed in the Stone Age, who knew? I then set about meeting some of the other clan members, and because there is so many, it was so helpful to learn their abilities and relationships. Whilst out and exploring, I found some tomatoes. Those would definitely come in handy. I also went and caught my first fish. I never ever thought I would say this, but I actually like the fishing mechanic in this game. It's different and the minigame is actually quite pretty. Maybe that's just because there's a flower, but it's still cute. I then headed back to the farm to do a little cleanup and plant some tomatoes for the rest of the day. The second day was a special one as it was my rite of passage. During the ceremony, I was given the option to select a perk based on my donation. I picked stamina as there is nothing more annoying than running low all the time. After the ceremony, the clan had gathered together for a little celebration. These prehistoric people know how to throw a party. But that was enough frivolity and it was time to get back to work with my extra stamina in tow. In the forest, I roamed around a little while, found some beans and potato seeds. I then spoke with Oka regarding his idea for animal friendships. It all sounded very intriguing. For completing Tare's quest, I also received a solar dryer and the DIY recipe and experimented by placing some fish inside. To finish off the day, I did a spot of night fishing in the forest and found some new fish. On day 3, I awoke to a message to speak to Frere, who on further inquiries wanted me to contribute 3 of my hard-earned fish. Oka had also completed his idea and gifted me a special flute that I could use to build friendship with wild animals. Eager to make some new friends, I headed straight to the forest where I began seducing some wild boar and some ibex with my fabulous music abilities. To my surprise, I remembered to contribute the 3 fish requested by Frere and then headed back to my farm, and the best thing happened. I crafted my first chest. In need of some items to put inside my new chest, I cleared out some resources. On day 4, I awoke and there was an ominous morning message about the cave. But before exploring that, Freya had a gift for me, and it turned out to be a smoker, another prehistoric machine for meat and fish. I fully intended on going to the caves today, but got distracted by cute bunnies and fishing, so I totally forgot. Instead, I tried to create a path through the bottom field on my farm, which was a massive mistake, and I ran out of energy. This was a terrible life choice. I was eager to make better choices on day 5, so I headed straight for Kroll to pounce on him as soon as he got out of bed to discuss his idea about creating some form of a barn. I gave him the resources and then it was a waiting game. Oka also asked me to help him with an idea for riding animals. However, I was so confused what he meant by a root, so I ran around trying to find something that looked root-like, but I was totally baffled, so I gave up and finally headed towards the caves. In the cave, I was greeted by some glowing armadillos, or at least that's what I think they are. They eventually allowed me access into the caves and I began clearing the way, opening a few new chambers as I went, until I ran out of stamina, that is. The next morning, there was some commotion by the river as they tried to build a bridge. Looks like pretty good engineering if you ask me. Day 6 was also an embarrassing day, as this is when I finally started to question why my crops weren't growing. Turns out I had forgotten to water them. Yeah, this is a basic thing. I don't know any farming games that I have played where you don't water your crops, as that is just basic biology, but I didn't, and no clue why it didn't occur to me sooner, but hopefully my crops can start growing now that I have given them a nice drink. Walking back and forth to the river was already starting to annoy me, so thankfully Voda came to my rescue with her idea for the well. If I keep doing this, I'm gonna get a terrible reputation for being a creep, but the next morning I waited for ages by Voda's bed, waiting for her to wake up. Boy, this girl can sleep. When our Sleeping Beauty finally arose, she gifted me the well and the recipe. This will be a farming game changer for sure. I also interrupted the bridge building to speak to Kroll about my barn. This finally means that I can invite animals to live on my farm once he's finished building it. A little update on the route quest. I was still confused on day 7, so no riding animals for me yet. On day 8, the bridge was finally complete and a whole new area unlocked, the jungle. Within the jungle, there appears to be a mysterious stone structure, which after a little explanation appears to be where prophecies are learnt, so I'll have to get working on these challenges to see what abilities can be unlocked. I did have a quick look around the jungle, but there wasn't anything else here really, so I headed back to my farm. And this is where I learned that my crops had finally grown. Clearly watering them works. Harvesting the crops also seemed to trigger the plant nursery idea, which should come in handy. I did decide to contribute my fresh produce so that the whole clan can enjoy my carrots, but turns out this probably wasn't the best idea. On day 9, my barn was finally completed, so it was time to invite some animals to live on my farm, where I would take excellent and wonderful care for them, and they will be fed and looked after every single day. I invited 2 ibex and 2 wild boar and made sure to pay attention to their genders, so just in case they may have baby animals. I was back to my creepy ways the next morning as I waited for Igrog to wake up so I could complete the plant nursery quest. I then headed to the mines as it was a rainy day, so I didn't have to do much farming. Still haven't quite figured out what the giant armadillo wants from me. I looked at some of the paintings, so instead of kind of racking my brain a bit more, I just mined some stone. After sleeping on the cave paintings, it finally dawned on me to try using a pine cone as a donation, so that's exactly what I did the next morning and headed straight to the caves. It worked, and then this unlocked some sort of armadillo challenge, and once done, this actually made it so that I could use portals within the caves, and it also unlocked a new cave where I found some flint, which should come in very handy. On day 12, a passage opened up near the southeast of the map, and we met a new clan. Turns out this clan are having a little beef with another group, so maybe we'll get to meet them too. The plant nursery also completed, so I went on a shopping spree buying some seeds and also a pomegranate tree or 2. After working on my farm a bit, I headed to the cave to mine some flint that would be needed for a tool upgrade. I then went and checked out the tools and decided to buy a pot so that maybe I can milk some of my new animals. We'll have to wait and see how that works in a couple days. Day 13 was pretty uneventful in regards to anything new happening, but I did get the sundial that Mary was working on, so I found a place to put that, and my milking pot was also complete, so that was quicker than I thought it would be. On day 14, the wood blocking the way in the northwest was removed, and there was a standoff with some potential new friends. But despite the standoff, they were welcomed into the village. Didn't seem like a sensible idea, but nonetheless, it transpired that these were the Mograni people who are feuding with the Yakians that we met a few days earlier. After a bit of a chit-chat, they decided that things were okay. Once this was done, I decided to upgrade my flint axe, and I also checked the route mission with Ocker again, and transpires that carrots or potatoes were what I needed. I knew I shouldn't have contributed those carrots a few days earlier, but I went to my farm praying that a new set of carrots were ready to be harvested, and thankfully it was, and finally this idea could start. Day 15 was a day of exploration. I first headed to the southeast exit and was greeted with a sandy beach-filled area filled with palm trees and shells. I also discovered a new seed, sea kale, and at the end of the beach there was another cave entrance. However, I couldn't explore it any further due to my tools. After visiting the southeast, I decided to see what was beyond the north exit, and here I was greeted with a wonderful savanna area. Here I found yet more seeds, including garlic and beets. I also found some intriguing animals, including a cozy looking, oh my gosh, it looks so squeezable, woolly mammoth and ostrich, which I have been desperate to find. There was also another cave here, however, like the last one, I couldn't explore it anymore. I found some intriguing gatherables, but headed home to finish working on my farm. The next morning, I wasted no time in planting my new seeds. I also discovered how annoying my farm animals really were. I also decided it was time to make the big step of moving out of my adoptive parents' home, so I spoke to Kroll about constructing my very own hut. Oka had also finished the riding animals idea, so now I can get around so much quicker. I decided to be sociable the next day and did a morning stroll around the clan, speaking to everyone. I also took a peek inside Reese's furniture catalogues. The items are so cute. Cannot wait to have my hut now. Whilst I was out and about, I collected my new flint axe and placed an order for some shears to be able to collect some wool and fur from my animals. I then decided to spend the rest of the day doing some fishing on the beach, where I discovered some new fish, including a chiton, a belemnite, and an antenna. Day 18 was the day my hut was complete, so I brought myself some move-in presents from Reese, including a beautiful flower rug. I also had a little play with the interiors, and turns out you can choose what displays in the plant pots. Love this feature. Now that I have my own house, I also have my own kitchen, so I rustled up some delicious meals. I then headed into the savannah to do some more exploring. Along the way, I tried to befriend some ostrich and did some fishing and caught an archer and a fat fish for the first time. However, time quickly ran away from me and I didn't make it home in time for the 2 a.m. curfew. Uh-oh. Due to staying out late the night before, my stamina was a little bit depleted. I guess that is what happens when you have too much fun fishing. I gave my boar a little haircut with the shears I commissioned, and I obtained some fur. I also got some milk from my female ibex. Doesn't work on the male one. Gerald also wanted to have a talk, and turned out he wanted to hold a race. I'm not sure that I will be a rising jockey star anytime soon. I guess I can only get better though. The next morning I spoke with Ted to discuss our idea for a press machine, and then there was no time to recover from yesterday's disappointment of a race, as Oka was holding yet another one. A chance to redeem myself? Maybe. I decided to do a practice run and came first, probably because there was no other competitors. But then it was time for the main event. I felt an improvement in my race style to begin with, but then it all went horribly wrong when I veered off the path and into the forest. And yup, you guessed it, I finished last. Feeling sad from my defeat, I decided I needed a new cuddly companion, so I headed to the forest and befriended a wolf. On day 21, I learnt that your animals can get sick, and my lovely ibex had caught fleas. Before they spread to the rest of the clan, I went to Ada, who gave me some medicine recipes, and hopefully that this will fix things up pretty quickly. I also ordered a new bucket as the water skin was not cutting it anymore. My energy was draining so quickly from watering all of my crops, so hopefully this will help things out. My new bucket was ready the next morning, and it definitely has a larger capacity, but my stamina still dwindled pretty quickly. I decided to head into the savannah for the evening, as if I hadn't learned anything from passing out a few days prior, but the risk was worth it, as I finally found some sesame seeds and some wheat seeds as well. I made it back home by midnight, but silly me had learnt nothing, and decided to do some late night farming, and yet again, I collapsed. I was very lucky that the next day was a rainy day. This meant that I could preserve some of my stamina. I spoke with Dari, who had an idea for a mortar and pestle, and checked in with Tare, who had completed the press idea. I put the press to good use and made some olive oil. I also realised I never actually gave my ibex the flea medicine. Please don't report me for neglect. She is happy now. On day 24, I spoke to Acre. I feel like I'm getting my names mixed up with all the different villagers, but I asked her to craft me a flint hammer. Ada also had a new idea for improving the soil, but there were quite a few resources that I didn't have yet. And I finally purchased the leather pot from Tare, hoping that this would help my cooking. The next morning, I had enough grain to start the mortar and pestle idea with Dari. I also checked out the new laundry setup. As the prosperity of your clan increases, little projects like this appear to complete, helping the village look a little bit more homely. I did a little bit of cooking with some fresh fish and then headed into the caves to make some progress. I found another totem. This time they had more paintings, so that means more offerings needed. I managed to donate one fish but didn't have the rest. As it was getting late, I hoofed it out of there and I thought I had made it home in time, but nope. On day 26, Nock had a new idea to create a fermenter, so I gathered the materials needed so he could start work ASAP. I then headed into the savannah where I found a group of very cool looking llamas. I set about befriending these so that when I have another barn, I can move them in straight away. On day 27, I had enough contributions to pay Kroll to build me another barn so that I can get some new animals. I want an ostrich and a llama. Dari also completed her idea for a mortar and pestle. I then also realised I had completed a prophecy, so I headed to the jungle. I'm not really sure what happens next, but it says something will happen, so I guess we'll just have to wait and see. I then grabbed some items that may be needed for the second cave totem and headed there. I donated a carrot and a wild pomegranate, and then the challenge began. This was quite challenging, hence the name challenge, as you had to twist the pillars so that the lines kind of all married up and then the power returned to the spot. But I eventually did it, and this unlocked the ability to use the round owl stones and also access a map of the caves, which would definitely come in handy. On day 28, it was the last day of spring and there was another rumble in the jungle. I'm still none the wiser as to really what's going on, especially after I completed the prophecy the other day. However, some other items did show up in this area that they seem pretty excited about, so we'll have to wait and see. I spoke with Nock, who completed the fermenter idea, and then went exploring in the savannah to see if I could find some feathers and horns there that I needed for Ada, and luckily my feeling was right, they do spawn here. However, I only found one feather. On to day 1 of spring, and Nock is really obsessed with the liquids. He already has another idea. It turns out that I have a spare feather stowed away that I don't remember collecting, so I began the composting idea with Ada. It was then my time to pay attention to my farm, as some of the crops had died. Here is where I made a big mistake though. Instead of going looking for new crop variations, I decided to fill my farm with crops that spawn in both spring and summer. Apparently, I really like tomatoes. I also tamed my first ostrich today, and they are now a resident of the clan. And on my way back to bed, I noticed a new crop in the village, and now I have eggplant seeds. On day 30, we had some new arrivals to the clan who appeared to bring us some salt. The new arrival wasted no time in asking for things and requested some smoked fish. As part of their idea, I decided it was time to add some path to my farm. I'm not really a fan of the chosen layout. I don't know what I was thinking, it's just not working for me, but it feels very messy, so maybe adding some path will help. In the forest, I found some strawberry, butternut squash, and sweet potato seeds, so now maybe we can have some variety on the farm. The next day, Ada finished her composting idea. Now I finally have something to do with all that poop I've been collecting. I also managed to do some fishing and caught a fish that looked suspiciously like a Pokemon name, or reminded me of it anyway, and then went into the savannah to try and level up some more friendship with the animals there. And whilst there, I found some garbanzo beans, I think that's how you say it, and also some chilies. Day 32 was a day of major farm renovations. I've now moved down into the lower fields as well to try and clear out some area for more crops there. I then spent the most of the day just gathering, running around and doing things, and I so nearly made it to bed in time. However, I was literally 2 steps away from the bed before I collapsed. Great job, Emma. On day 33, after blowing all of my stone collection making paths for the farm, I headed to the caves to replenish my supplies, and when I say I spent pretty much all day here, that is 100% honest. The first chore of day 34 was to feed my animals as they were getting somewhat hungry. Oops. But my ostrich did lay an egg, so they can't have been that unhappy. Oka was also hosting a race today. Let's see if I could do better than last time. I did start off weak, and unfortunately there was no big comeback, but I did finish 4th this time. I spent the rest of the day in the savannah where I found some amaranth seeds, and I also got an ostrich friend for my ride along. On day 35, finally had enough clan prosperity to work on Zelk's idea, and then I spent the day fishing on the beach where I got some interesting fish. Day 36 was festival day, so I watered my crops and headed straight there. Everyone had gathered in the caves, and you can actually paint on the cave walls, which is pretty cool. I decided to paint a daisy, and I just really enjoyed the whole idea of this. It was a nice little thing to do. Day 37 was another rainy day, so I made some progress in the caves. I did get a little stuck along the way. It definitely feels like they're getting harder to progress. The next morning, I was back to my creepy ways of waiting for people to wake up. But that was all for nothing, as I didn't actually have anything to trade with Zelk. I then had to become a doctor, or a vet would be more appropriate, as there was some form of illness sweeping my herd. I also had enough prosperity to work on Nock's cheesy idea. I apologise. Not much happened on day 39, apart from I decided that because I had tomatoes literally coming out of my ears, it was time to go into industrial-sized sun-dried tomato production, so I crafted some more dryers and we got under the way there. I don't honestly know what the best way of making money is right now, but these seem to be doing okay-ish. I also added some sesame oil to my factory of produce. Seems to be working okay as well. A wonderful thing happened on day 40. We can finally make cheese. Oh, yes. And then I also invited 2 llamas to share the barn with the ostriches. So hopefully they will give us some fur or something. I don't really know what they produced. And technically I don't think they're called llamas, but they look like llamas, so I'm going to call them llamas. But yeah, that was day 40. On day 41, I learnt that llamas can't produce milk. So I decided that it was time to speak to Kroll and speak about having another barn added. I could have upgraded, but they were so expensive and I don't have the money for that. So we went to add in another one, and I had to move around some buildings just to make it fit, as it turns out you can't put them on the lower field. This was a little bit hard because Kroll kept running away from me. I need your help. The next day, my first cheese was ready. I will be saving that for dinner for later. And I also decided to upgrade my fermenter production. Then I headed into the caves and eventually found the route that I needed. I'd previously got stuck here, so it was great to find my way through. I placed my hand on a wall and became an ancestor or something. And I found some obsidian, so I mined the obsidian ore until I could mine no more. The next morning, I spoke with Aka about the obsidian, who seemed pretty excited and wanted some ore to do some tests. I spoke with Inza, who gave me some form of harpoon to make fishing easier, not complaining about that. I cooked up some baba ganoush for the first time and tested out my harpoon and caught a stargazer fish. On day 44, Ron decided he had had enough and needs something stronger to drink, so I started the brewer idea. I then tamed some more ibex to up my milk and cheese production. The rest of the day was spent with my chef's hat on as I cooked up a storm, making some interesting recipes. I'm not sure what makes this cake a travelling one. Maybe it has legs? The next day, Aka has decided that her current blacksmith setup won't do, so work has begun on her very own tool station. Reese has also decided that the clan should invest in the arts, it is very important folks, and came up with a new idea. However, I am lacking the flowers for this one right now. I then spent the rest of the day in the mines collecting more obsidian for future tools. The next morning, I grabbed some flowers and went and spoke with Reese about her artistic idea. I also then went and spoke with Ron about his idea. I forgot to trigger this the other day, oops. And it also dawned on me that I don't have any bison yet, so I went ahead and tamed one. I'll just need to find a mate for them soon. Day 47, and Reese really doesn't mess around. The next morning, her idea was complete, and I was able to place a construction site for her art station. Dari also has a new idea for a granary, but the obsidian cost is high, so this will have to wait. I spent the day chopping trees and catching bees. Oh wait, wrong game. But I did get some more wood. The next day was my favourite kind of day. A race day. Yay. But nonetheless, I didn't let my previous experiences hold me back, and I went for it. There was a split second where I was in the lead and I thought, yes, we've finally done it. But I was pipped to the post and ended up coming in second place, which is a huge improvement on previous races. So I was pretty happy with that. For my troubles, I was rewarded with some popcorn. Yum. Zeda was also finally in town, so I was also able to speak to her about the beekeeping idea. Cannot wait to get some honey going. Day 49 was spent in the mines collecting yet more obsidian. And then before I knew it, day 50 was here. Zeda arrived in town to give me some beehives, which I placed immediately. And then the rest of my final day of this video was spent doing some fishing on the beach. I just want to say I have absolutely loved playing this game so far. If you want to see me do another 50 days, another 100 days, please drop me a comment. If you're thinking about buying this game, I have really enjoyed it. I've been obsessed with it and played it pretty much consistently for a good few hours in one sitting. So it's been so much fun. Let me know what you think about it in the comments, and I shall see you again soon with another video. Bye bye!